Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. If you or someone close to you is a high-performing industry leader sensing that past momentum isn't enough for 2026 competitive landscape, stay tuned. This episode is definitely for you. Our topic, the three questions high-performing industry leaders should ask about their 2026 business development strategy. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Three Questions Podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. In 2026, with economic shifts, digital disruptions, and saturated markets, business leaders can't rely on autopilot growth. Poorly structured business development strategies can even stall their thriving businesses, leading to missed opportunities, inefficient resource allocation, and worst of all, shrinking profits. Nobody likes that. Joining us from Hollywood, Florida is my friend and colleague, Mariangelica Alvarado. She is the founder of Luminary Catalyst LLC, and she specializes in business development, crafting custom sales and business development strategies that fuel pipelines, secure high-value partnerships, and deliver data-driven growth roadmaps. Mariangelica, great to see you again. As always, thank you for making time for us for the podcast today.
Wayne, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, well, we should do a little bit of an announcement about what's going to come down the road here. I'm pretty excited about that too. So, before we get into our three questions, let's, I'm going to pick your brain here for a little bit.
Go for it.
There's a word here that you've been talking about it to me all the recalibration has become a word here. You
Yeah,
keep bringing it up. Okay, so let's tap into your expertise on recalibrating business development strategies. So I guess my first thing I want to ask is what, from your point of view, is the first sign that a successful business leader needs to recalibrate their business development strategy? And to that point, could you walk us through what a recalibration process actually looks like when you put it into practice?
sure. Recalibrate. Sometimes you can be a high-performing individual. I'll give you an example, a high-performance vehicle. It could be just something great, it runs well. But if you just recalibrate the computer inside, you get extra um, horsepower, you get extra oomph in your driving abilities. Same thing with business. Sometimes we have to stop and recalibrate what we're doing, but it takes some looking backwards to be able to see what you've been able to accomplish, what you have done, but then also where the gaps is with what you want to do. So recalibrating is a good way. It's a great word that I use a lot because sometimes you don't have to do major shifts. They're just simple tweaks that can make a world of difference, whether it's an outcome you want in Q1, Q2, or just double down on your efforts from the year before. But you have to be able to analyze where you've been to be able to see where you're going and see the necessary calibrations. So I'll give you an example. I have a client right now that he's a great intellectual property attorney, but he's never mentioned any of his expertise with international intellectual property. And so that was a small calibration that as I'm talking to him and he's giving me his expertise, I realized when I did my audit for his website, his LinkedIn, his everything, there's no mention of that. And I'm going, that's a differentiator right there. So we recalibrated and included that in all of his collateral. And that's what's making him different from all of his colleagues and competitors.
When you audit a company's growth strategy, where do you usually start? And okay, and why would that be?
Usually the audit begins with questioning leadership. If it's a VP of sales, I'll go in and be like, where have it been? How is it going? Where are you finding that there's a gap with your sales team or your one or two salespeople that you have? Maybe their closing time is elongated. Maybe they're not bringing enough qualified leads. Maybe they're not qualifying the leads well enough. So when they're doing their intake calls, there's a gap there, and then that's where the prospect loses interest or loses confidence in them. Sometimes it's just understanding we all are creatures of habits, and when we get into something of a bad habit, it's really hard for us to catch ourselves. So sometimes I run through their sales pitch, I run through their sales intake calls. If they have it on videotape, I like watching it to see what are the things that are going well and where maybe they could be missing the mark.
Okay, so this is obviously, probably the most important question to ask is what's more often the problem? Is it the strategy or the execution?
Execution, believe it or not, because a lot of us develop a lot of great strategy when it comes to, strategies on paper, right? You can go through it, you can look at it, and that's kind of like theory. But then
Mhm.
in the execution part, that's real life. That is, am I not following it well? Sometimes it becomes a comfort level with you trying to recalibrate your sales pitch or your sales strategy or just your processes. And until you have the execution down, well, like you had the previous one, this one's going to feel clunky. This one's going to feel different. So it's in the execution part. So there's a lot of role playing that should really take place for you to begin to feel comfortable with the new processes that you want to recalibrate your sales process. It's in the execution.
So this is why you're here. Give me some insight here. So let's now turn to our three questions high-performing industry leaders should ask about their 2026 business development strategy. And again, our questions are from the perspective of industry leaders seeking proactive growth. So, Mary Angelica, here we go. Question
Okay.
number one. My professional services business has been growing consistently for years, primarily, it seems, based solely on the momentum from my initial remaking efforts. How do I shift from operating on past momentum to making more intentional growth moves? Mary Angelica, over to you.
Well, one of them is what are gonna be your new sales goals? Are you looking to develop a deeper lead or funnel? Are you trying to improve your closing ratios? Where's that growth going to come into your revenue? Are you even tapping into new markets? So that goes back to asking what is the end game, and then goes back into re-engineering the process because sometimes people are happy with what they're at, but maybe they want more of it. So then let's talk about the multiplier. I'll give you another example. I was talking to someone who they do a lot of networking. And so I said, well, what's the ROI on all the hours that you're investing in your networking? So we looked into that and then it realized it was a 3x multiplier. And I said, so far, this is good. What do you want? Do you want to become more efficient and out of your network get a bigger multiplier? Or do you want to widen this and you're able to then apply that 3x multiplier to a new networking community? Those are the kinds of questions that you ask because you want to see what's the next level. If you're going to bring in more revenue, what's the strategy behind it? So again, it goes back to what you've been doing, what you want to do, but what's the end game? Is it going to be revenue or are you just trying to, streamline your performance? So it goes back to the client's needs. The client, where is the want in that situation?
So, how can an industry leader incorporate, and this is you and I, for those who don't know, Mary Angela is not only brilliant, but she's also a data nerd, which is one thing we have in common with each other. We both like
We are.
numbers. So how can an industry leader incorporate data driven tools like the KPI, which is a key performance indicator that you use when you're tracking your products? And again, the purpose here is to make more intentional, precise moves that are measurable. How can I use that kind of data? So I know I'm a big data nerd. I like doing capital forecasting for all my clients, as you well know.
Well, that's a little different. Yeah, your kind of data and my kind of data are a little different,
Yeah,
but the
exactly. I
essence
realize
is the
that. I know
same.
that.
Yes. Well, a lot of the times is I always say you've got to look at the history, kind of like in mutual funds, the past performance doesn't necessarily, predict future returns. But in this case, it does because you can look back and see what are the categories of where are your referrals coming from? Where's your biggest business coming from? So you have to go back and do some data digging into are you getting stronger leads from this particular organization, this particular referral partner, this particular marketing effort, business development effort? You got to first realize where the data is coming from. And then after that, understand, well, okay, it's coming from there, but how much effort did it take out of that? What's the ROI of each one of those categories that you've identified? And once you identify that, then you're like, where are you going to double down your efforts? And which ones should really be replaced with something else? Because maybe they're lagging. You're not really getting enough ROI out of certain efforts. So you've got to look at the data. So the key performance indicators is, first of all, identifying the sectors, the revenue, where it's coming from, the type of client, the kind of business, the size of industry, the size of the book of business, or I should say revenue for the companies. Is it the size of employees? All of these things, you start looking at your client base, right? Because your client base is your past performance. And that's where you can get the best to see where you can get your future results. And that's where you have to be able to look at the data. But then again, most people are not collecting the proper data. So a lot of the times I go in, and once they give me this information, I'm like, give me the backstory on these clients. How long have they been with you? Are they growing? Are they staying still? Are they looking to hire? Are they looking to open up new markets? What services are you providing for them? And these are the questions that you're then going to become more of an advisor to your clients. But then again, I'm asking you to see what clients are the ones that are the best fit for you. So what you want to do at the end is clone those successful relationships. Go ahead. That's it. It's that simple.
Perfect. I like that idea. Great minds think alike. Okay, so our topic today is the three questions high-performing industry leaders should ask about their 2026 business development strategy. And again, joining me from Hollywood, Florida is Mary Angelica Alvarado. She is the founder of Luminary Catalyst LLC, and Mary Angelica specializes in fractional business development, crafting custom sales, and business development strategies, and she is really good at it. Mary Angelica, let's move on to question number two. My business has used cold calling and mass mailing to generate new business for the past 10 years. While my business has grown, I'm wondering if I should be doing more or something different to bring in new customers. What bold move might I be avoiding in my business development, and how do I know it's time to act on it? So, over to you. This is right in your wheelhouse if there was ever a question.
Well, a lot of the times it's if that person is the rainmaker, are they utilizing everything out there, including a digital presence? And I always say if you're selling a product, it's always going to be about what's the reviews on the product. But if your product is a service, how are you showing people the way you think? So one of the things that I've always recommended to everybody is what we're doing right here, a podcast. By this kind of interaction, people get a feel for you. People get away of the way you are, the way you express yourself, the way you are able to analyze or bring value to a conversation. So for anybody out there that's in a professional service industry, one of the first things I say are how are you out there doing speaking engagements? How are you doing workshops? How are you educating? Because a lot of us, we kind of do our own homework from our couches based on the people that we want to do business with. And then after that, we reach out to them. And so that's one way that I say a bold move, start getting on podcasts, get speaking engagements, get into a large room and have a conversation with them. That is how you fish with a net and not with a pole.
So, now, drawing from your work securing high value partnerships, what role do external collaborators play in identifying and executing these bold moves without overextending resources? In other words, everybody has a limit, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the first you have to do is audit your own time, right? How much are you going to invest in your own business development and stick to that? You have to definitely put that on your calendar and then make the right moves to leverage that time. We all get the same 24 hours. So then you have to then go back and look at your relationships and be like, what am I looking for? What is my end game? And what you end up doing is developing a hit list of people that you want to reach out to be able to dive deep into those relationships. Find ways to collaborate, be able to open doors for others. Reciprocity really is key because
Yeah,
it's not just about
absolutely.
me getting. It's what can I bring to the table for you? This is a bona fide business relationship where we're both going to allow each other to be leveraged. Who can I introduce you to? And can you get me into these rooms? And usually most people, when they feel that it's an authentic connection with real interest and a real reciprocity, like philosophy, people are happy to open doors for others. That door could be getting into a specific conference, going into a specific room, speaking to a specific, person that they want to meet,
Key
or an
introductions, right?
organization.
100%. Yeah.
Key introductions, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you
But you need to
100% on that
have
one. That
you as
one,
the person.
yeah, you hit it out of the park on that one because, excuse me, that has been, I will just say personally, one of the big differentiators for me, Mary Angelica, when I moved from Toronto down to LA. Because in Toronto, and you know this, I had my radio show and I had my team. I had the estate planning attorney, I had a tax advisor, I had mortgage person, I had a couple real estate people I worked with. I had my team. And when my clients came in, I basically had my team to look after them. And then when I moved down here to the United States, build a cross-border practice, I discovered that living in LA, not having an estate planning attorney in LA wasn't really going to help my client in New York or Toronto or Vancouver or South Florida or wherever. So all of a sudden I realized that I had to get out and meet a lot of people. And I discovered that if I wanted to be a useful resource, I needed to be able to not just tell them what I do. I had to look at it from a different perspective and find out what is it that they need? How can I be a resource for them? So you are preaching to the choir, as the saying goes. Um,
But I'm going to take it one level up, Wayne, and that's
okay.
something else. And I think that a lot of people forget tracking your introductions. I can meet a whole lot of people, but are those introductions the right kinds that I need? I can provide a lot of introductions, but are those the right introductions that person needs? So one of the things that I came up for my clients is a tracker for every introduction that they write, because with them next time they meet with that person, they can just sort that Excel sheet and be like, hey, Wayne, last time I've given you over, since we last spoke, I've given you four introductions. It was this person, and this person. How did they go? I have that already in a document that I'm able to go back on and say, in the last 6 months, I've made 8 introductions to Wayne. I'm going to have to find out from him, how well did they go? You know, did they, it could be a way of tracking it for on a monthly basis or quarterly basis or whenever you and I set a cadence on how much we communicate. But if I don't keep track of what I'm introducing you to, are those introductions really of value? So that shows that you're making thoughtful introductions, very laser focused introductions for your community, for your own center of influences.
Okay. So let's put this on the table right now. I have that document in my inbox, as we both know, right? So to me, not only is there that part, but there's another part, which is the follow up by the person who gets the introduction as well. So yes, uh, heard loud and clear.
Yeah, there's a thought process behind it. There's a method to the madness, but it really does work. It makes you more efficient too when you're on a call with a center of influence, someone of values, someone that you're deepening that relationship with. When you have that information at your fingertips, that person says, "Oh my gosh, they're asking me about all the people that they introduced me to. Did I not communicate? Like, did I not follow up? How am I going to then, track I'm getting as introductions? Because we're all getting inbox introductions from our network. That's why we're out in this community, and our community is nationwide, Wayne. So that's where you have to become more organized and more strategic, because again, you want to leverage your time and you want to use it wisely.
And that's why we are working together, my friend. Okay, let's get to question number
Indeed.
three. I don't want to hold you hostage here all day because I know you got lots going on. So let's get to question number three. Here we go. At last count, there are 113,000 licensed attorneys in the state of Florida. Everybody calls themselves an expert these days. How do I stand out in a saturated space? Mark, this again a perfect question for you. Take it away.
I think let's say everyone's a brilliant attorney. It's going to be in the details. Okay. What are they doing to stand above their colleagues? It could be that they're the only ones out there speaking engagements or writing articles, putting out a blog, putting out a newsletter, educating people on the details of their area of expertise. I remember October down here in South Florida. For example, the state of Florida said you don't have to pay sales tax anymore on rent. So that was a huge thing for commercial space. Well, only a couple of attorneys were out there mentioning this. That drove a lot of traffic to their website. That drove a lot of traffic. So sometimes it's about finding those tidbits of information that can really bring value to others. So it goes back to your question, 113,000 attorneys. Let's say a good chunk of those are just business attorneys. Which ones are the ones that are giving us really good information as a business owner? Those are the ones that I'm going to go to if I have a question. Those are the ones that are standing above because they're not just regurgitating, they're analyzing for us. They're giving us a different perspective. They're acting more of a business owner than an attorney. That becomes already a relatable ground that we're both on. So again, you trying to find ways that your competitors, they don't necessarily want to put themselves out there. So by you putting yourself out there, you're already only 10%, of your competitors or of your colleagues are actually doing that. So out of the 113, it's 1,130 that are actually out there, or actually 11,300 that are the ones that are actually putting themselves out there. But then how many are actually doing it correctly? Then that's where you start being part of a smaller niche level of experts that are actually verbalizing, articulating that information that we all want. So again, it goes back to doing things that others don't. Speaking
You meant,
engagements,
yeah,
podcasts.
yeah, I was just going to bring that up again. This is something that you and I have talked about,
Hmm.
is that the idea of getting out into the public
Yes.
and not be afraid, not that I would be, but speaking engagements, something I used to do all the time back in Canada. Like I know I got my podcast here, which I love doing, but you're the one who we had the conversation about, Wayne, you need to be in boardrooms, right?
Yes.
And talking to people. And it's actually something that we're working on. So, and I value that with you and some of this ideas that you have. And in your coaching and in the workshops that you do, what unique messaging or business development tactics have helped clients? And again, in industries that are so crowded, and again,
Yeah.
like I know you like working with attorneys. Like, how do people differentiate themselves authentically and not just one-off, some sustainability as well?
Hmm. Well, it's a great question. I think a lot of the times is understanding the landscape and understanding the person's natural tendencies. But first and foremost, that person's got to be willing to implement new habits and acquire new skills. You may be great one-to-one, but you may need some work speaking in a crowd. Or, you may have a mind that you're great on a one-to-one, but when you're trying to talk to others, your mind goes blank. So it really becomes preparation and strategy behind that preparation and the end game and the focus and the goal of that preparation. And I don't think you need to do too many. Pick one. Pick one and execute. Pick one per quarter and execute. Whether it's you're going to roll out a workshop because whether you're an immigration attorney right now and there's so much ambiguity out there and everybody's looking for information. Well, do a workshop. Do it small, concise, go on LinkedIn Live and just give a shared tip of what's happening right now. Show people that you are at the top of your game and happy to share that level of expertise. So again, it goes back to those numbers, right? I think only 10% of people out there are actually able to public speak comfortably and effectively. So it takes practice. It is muscle memory. See, people think muscle memory, they think of athletes, but I think of muscle memory as the one up here. You need to have great talking points and you need to also be able to synthesize data, meaning a process of someone asks you a question, your mind just goes crazy and then you're able to give out the right information. That quickness is and that ability to pivot is because you know your information cold turkey. But you just need to practice being able to share that information cold turkey. And that's something that a lot of people tend to falter with. They know what they know, they're maybe not good under pressure to share that information. So again, to your point, how do you differentiate yourself? Depends on what your end game is going to be. what you want to do. If it's never having a digital presence because you've never thought of using mass emailing, try that execution, do it for 90 days, look at the data. What's the response? And most people think, well, I want to be able to put quality content out there. Actually, no, it's quantity because you don't know what is going to hit out there from your audience until you start getting that data back. So what you think is quality data, it could be missing the mark because your audience really wants something else. So by diversifying that and checking out what is getting more traction, that's when you start fine tuning the messaging and fine tuning your efforts to be able to quantify it and get more revenue and more ROI.
You're talking about some of the things that people do well and not so well, and it kind of leads me to just before we wrap things up here, how do how do industry leaders sabotage their own growth potential? They saw, my old boss, Chris Reynolds, God bless him, used to say to me, Wayne, there are no such thing as bad braves. There are bad chiefs. So how do industry leaders sabotage themselves based on what you've seen?
They get stagnated. They just don't want to
This is the way
evolve.
we do it
It's been
here.
working all this time. Right. Well, it's worked all this time. It works well for me. Like I've become, comfortable in this. The minute you say the word comfort in this, then you're missing opportunities. You're leaving money on the table. You're not giving that your company a chance to grow some more. You're not setting loftier goals for your revenue or for your growth strategy. And it's true what they say. A lot of the times, the team that got you to this level is not going to be the team that gets you to the next level because unfortunately, you need people that have had a bigger scope, who worked in bigger audiences or worked in bigger games to come in and give you that strategy. You only know what you know until someone gives you that calibration, that one thing that could change, that could unlock new revenue, new potential, new markets.
Okay, one last thing. I just thought of this.
Okay.
We all love stories. Could you share a story where a client thought they had a business development problem, but it turned out to be something else? Get an example, just curious.
So I actually have a client right now that she thought her efforts were doing well. She had the idea of, I'm growing my company and I'm going after clients. And I said, okay, let's develop that strategy. Well, how's the strategy been? And she goes through, I'm using this tool, I'm using that tool, I'm using LinkedIn. I'm like, well, where's the data? How has it well been, what's been happening? Have you been able to get any new clients from your efforts? So but then afterwards, I said, is that really what you want? And I said, but you mentioned to me you're growing by acquisition. How are you finding these other companies to acquire? And that was her huge aha moment. She's like, I've been focusing on the wrong thing. She's like, I have a goal to grow the revenue of the company by this, but I've been focusing on getting new clients versus getting new companies that I want to grow by acquisition. And I
Hmm.
said to her, then that's a completely different strategy. We've got to scrap what you were telling me before and begin again. And so we started recalibrating and we started the outreach a little different, using the same tools she has, still reaching out through LinkedIn. But now we have a different audience. Now the messaging is different. Now her collateral has to be different. She didn't have anything for anyone that she wanted to go after to bring on board because she didn't think of it that way. So we redesigned a page on her website that speaks just to what it would be to come on board. It was a good effort. She really appreciated it. And in the meantime, she ended up reaching out to more successful people that she's bringing on board as, again, growing by acquisition. And I think two of those conversations uh, became, they're ongoing right now, but they were prospering. They're actually good ones. And that happened within 90 days. And you're thinking, well, that was like really a long time to only get two qualified people. Well, no, these are other companies that she's in talks with to bring them on board. And she had not found anybody in the first 9 months, but in the last 3 months, she found two candidates. So it goes back to recalibrating the messaging, but understanding sometimes she's thinking of growing the revenue by this method, but really her focus should have been growing by acquisition, which was something she had on the back burner. And we recalibrated that. So now that's on her front burner. And now the clients are more of a secondary for her efforts, not for her team, but for her efforts.
Okay. I will say this, just on that note, that one of the great gifts, and this is personally for me, and I think for this other individual, that Mary Angelica brings, is that she seems to always see things from a different point of view. How many times have we been talking when you've looked at a situation I'm dealing with or talking about, and you just literally bring a completely different dynamic to the conversation? And I'll tell you, I value that so much. How many times that has happened in our conversations? Like, well, did you do this? Or did you think of that? And I'm going, no. And so I just want you to know, I really appreciate that. And it's one of your God-given gifts that I really do
Well, thank
appreciate.
you.
Okay, we're going to wrap up here. For those who are watching us, I can easily see that, we've got your contact information here on the screen, but we know there are lots of folks listening on Apple, on Spotify, all over the United States. I know you work with clients all over, and I probably have a client from Canada reached out to you. You'll be happy to meet with them as well. So for
Yes.
those listening, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you? How can they contact you?
Well, two very easy things. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I definitely go on there a lot. I may not be posting a lot because I'm doing other things, and I really need to get better about posting all of these stories in my LinkedIn, but I do check it. Or you can go to my website, luminarycatalyst.com. There's at the bottom of the page, you can send in a request to speak with me, or email me. It's mariangelica@luminarycatalyst.com. It's that simple. So just make sure you spell right. It's only got one A in the center. I can't tell you how many times people put a double A and it bounces back. So just
It's
food for thought.
Mariangelica. That's
Thank
the
you,
way.
Wayne, for all 12 letters.
Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, when I was a kid, you got to learn the alphabet really, really fast. You got to. Well, listen,
Yeah,
I want to
trust
thank,
me.
I
That's the
want
one
to,
thing people say.
yeah, there you go. Well, I want to thank you, Mary Angelica, for joining us today. You were a great guest as usual. And I'm going to step out on a limb here and just say, we're going to be seeing a little bit more of Mary Angelica, because in the not too distant future, we're going to turn the tables here, and she's actually going to host. We'll see how many, maybe two, maybe three, upcoming Three Passion Questions podcast, where I'm going to be the subject matter expert and she's going to be grilling me with questions. So we'll
I
see how
know.
fast I think on my feet here, is what I was thinking when you're. So we're looking forward to
I
that.
know. I can't wait to see how that turns out. Yes.
Yeah, right. It could be my team here of Jared and Kira might be doing a lot more editing than they've been used to up until now. So, looking forward to having you visit us here in Southern California in the not too distant future, Mary Angelica.
I'm
Um,
excited. I'm
Again,
excited to go out there and be a part of the team.
gonna be a lot of fun. Today we have Mary Angelica Alvarado with us. She is the founder of Luminary Catalyst LLC. Thank you, Mary Angelica, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Wayne. The pleasure is all mine and always wonderful to see you, my friend.
I look forward to bringing you the Three Questions podcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive a notification when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we will see you soon.